Good morning. So I am Colonel John Transu. I'm the TICM Cyber here at the Cyber Center of Excellence, and I thank you for all coming this morning. And so the key item that we're going to be talking about is modernizing our capabilities for this multi-domain operations. And what we look at is with the national security strategy is where I'm going to be starting it, to just highlight from the national security strategy with the national defense strategy on down to our multi-domain operations and then our cyber capabilities that work with that. But the failure to modernize our force risks us with a concern of having a force that is prepared for our previous conflicts, ready to dominate our previous conflicts, but not prepared for our future capabilities. And that is what our national security strategy and what our multi-domain operations is actually concerned with. And with the national security strategy, many of them talk about the cyberspace, where we have deter and disrupt our malicious cyber actors, build our defensible government networks, deploy our layered defenses, the attribution, the accountability, and the response actions, enhancing our cyber tools and our expertise, not just on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side, and improve our integration and agility, improving our integration between the offensive, the defensive, starting to play a game of European football, of soccer, not American football, and having the agility to do that. Integrating with our industry, our academic partners, as we've been discussing here at the TechNet, and along with our coalition and our allies and our partners. As we look at the future presence, we have a concern with the lack of the international norms as we develop what our policies, our cyber policies, are going to be. Attribution is difficult, and it's becoming even more difficult by the day. And there's the low barrier of entry, as we've been discussing for several years. Our homeland is no longer secure. In the previous conflicts, you could go, if you were going to be attacking the United States over the land domain or the sea domain, you had to go through the Army, go through the Navy. Now to have an impact in our nation, you can go through the cyber and bypass a lot of our defenses. So it's just setting the stage here for what the Army is looking at into the future. Some of our TRADOC future trends, if you haven't seen those, 9 out of the 12 are looking at items related to cyberspace. You have artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, quantum computing, machine learning, data science, robotics. All of those are related to our field, which is going to be having not just a incremental approach for our 2028, 2035 operational environment, but a transformational approach. Getting back to, is our Army prepared, still postured for our previous conflicts, but not ready for the 2028, 2035 operational environment? Some of our adversaries that we're looking at, changing in their techniques also. Shifts from the exploitations of focused on the systems to focusing on the human, which is normally one of the weakest links that we have. They've been studying us for not just the last 17 years, but many years before that. They know what our TTPs are, how we operate, how we are dependent on our coalition, our partners, our industry. They're very patient. And they're not going to fight the United States against our strengths. If we were an adversary, would we want to go up tank on tank or a aircraft to aircraft, a ship to ship? Probably not right now. We discussed earlier that there's the low barrier to entry in cyberspace. And so what they would be looking at doing is being able to bypass us in the cyber domain. Along with below the threshold of military conflict in the international law. It's hard to determine what the attribution is, and it's hard to respond. Is what we're looking at just an individual actor, a organized crime, or is it a nation state that are conducting operations against us? getting after the plausible deniability. All moving into, we are going to be competing, having competition in this very complex environment, as was discussed in the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, and moving towards our multi-domain operations. So we are having a changing landscape. We're now going to be looking at the large-scale combat operations, the multi-domain operations. There's the advances in technology that we discussed earlier with the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, our evolving, emerging threats that we definitely see. Key influences, both within the technology sphere of the Moore's Law. I like the big data bang, if you think of a big bang, but in the data field. Data is now is everywhere, and it's just going to increase, constantly increase. The Internet of Things are coming, where you have the devices everywhere, not just our servers or routers, but and our mobile systems, but a sensor in the refrigerator, in the microwave, in the thermostats, and all of these are IP-based systems. Connect anywhere with the mobile devices. The relentless pursuit of technology and our innovation. The demand on talent that General Funk was talking about this morning, the global demand on talent. So how can we ensure that we're ready for the 2028 environment, both with our personnel, ensuring that our industry partners can help us when we have all of these strains on our personnel systems. In the past years, the Army, the DoD, has been working on the cyber mission force, developing our cyber combat mission teams or cyber protection teams at our combatant command level. Here in the future, where the Army is working on providing capabilities now at a lower level with the theater, the field Army, at the Corps, the division, the BCT, trying to increase our capabilities at those formations in support of our multi-domain operations. So the Army now has the new multi-domain operations, which is here in the bottom right, of competing, increasing our competitive space, the area that we're in right now, constantly in. Penetrating, maybe ensuring that we can neutralize long-range systems that we might not be able to get in the physical domains. The disintegrate, anti-access and aerial denial. Exploitation, the freedom of maneuver, and then recompete as we consolidate. All of these multi-domain operations definitely have a key piece from the cyber domain as we support their capabilities. So I'll be all of that as just a background. I always look at what's at the 2028 and the 2035 operational environment that we need to be prepared for. And so the cyberspace, we are preparing to work with the military, with our DoD, with our partners on increasing our cyber capabilities. So some of these capabilities are what the TICM Cyber portfolio is, and so I'll be discussing them a little bit and then going into some of detail on a few of our new capabilities that we have. So first of all, the TICM Cyber, we have four primary pieces of the portfolio where we have our defensive cyber operations, the offensive cyber operations, what's called the persistent cyber training environment, PCTE, and then the cyber situational understanding, the cyber SU. Notice on the last slide I discussed where we're building all of these for our cyber mission force. We are now also building these capabilities still for the cyber mission force, but now also for our cyber warfare battalion, which is the offensive cyber operations, defensive cyber operations at the tactical level, and then what's called the I2Qs, which supports the multi-domain task force, the MDTF, building out at Fort Lewis, and then there's going to be other organizations. So our cyber portfolio is now not just for the cyber mission force, but for our other forces throughout the Army. And the defensive cyber operations, I'll be primarily discussing the requirement documents, and later this week when the PEOs are here, we'll also be discussing some of the material solutions and how our industry partners can help become involved with our requirements and where the Army is going. But on the DCO side, what's highlighted in green are our requirement documents that are already approved at the Army level, at what's called the AROC, the ARB. These future ones we are developing right now, and they should be Army-approved requirements by this coming winter. On the DCO side, we have, first of all, we have our platforms. You have, in the land domain, you need to maneuver, just like you do with a tank, with a Bradley. In the cyber domain, we also need to maneuver, and these are our maneuver platforms. We have the Garrison DCO platform that is at the installations across the Army, where our cyber defenders from the Cyber Protection Brigade, the Cyber Protection teams, regional cyber centers remotely can go into the garrisons and actually have a platform already at the installations. This is actually being modified a little bit, where we are now partnering with Army's Network Command, NETCOM, and the Army Cyber for what was called the Garrison Environment Fabric, the GEF, and we are kind of combining some of those efforts to have both the Garrison DCO platform and the GEF as part of those capabilities. The Deployable Dco System, what's called the DDS, that is primarily for our cyber protection teams, the Cyber Protection Brigade, as they deploy forward. What we've been working on for the last several years is getting it smaller, both more capable, but also smaller where they can put the kit on the airplane in the overhead compartments. We can't be trying to ship the kit forward. If they have someplace to go, they need to be able to maneuver there quickly. And so that kit is being designed for smaller capabilities of being able to fit in a backpack on the overhead compartment. Our cyber analytics, building out our analytics, our cloud data, our big data of where analytics can be done from. This is the area of where that requirement actually falls under. Our DCO tool suite, just like in the land domain, you have effects that you need to provide, whether it's with field artillery, with a tank round, with a 50 caliber. In the cyber domain, we also have cyber effects that are provided. And on the defensive side, these are the effects that we can provide that reside on the maneuver platforms. The tactical DCO infrastructure is the maneuver platform that we have now at the tactical forces. We need our BCTs, our divisions, our corps to also have defensive capabilities, and these is the hardware and software that's going at the BCTs. That's being combined with our mission command systems, ensuring that our system fits there at the BCT, that we have it in lockstep with the maneuver command efforts. Insider threat is always a large concern, and so we have insider threat capabilities that are being designed for the different enclaves, whether it's the top secret, SIPR, or the unclassified networks. And so that is being used at the regional cyber centers, at the Army Cyber ACOIC, and other locations to be able to hunt and find things that might not be normal, abnormal traffic. The forensics and malware, when they do the initial response actions. When there is an actual response, the regional cyber centers, the cyber protection teams, the Army Cyber ACOIC, and our other cyber defenders, these are the capabilities that they would need to actually conduct forensics and then see what the malware is there, quickly respond to the action, and then quickly put the system back into service. And so these are the requirement bins that we have for our defensive cyber operations side. In the future, we're going to be looking at the advanced sensors. As we were talking about with the Internet of Things and other sensors that are locations that are out there, same way in the Army. We need to be able to know what is actually happening at the battlefield, especially as we get lower into the tactical formations, at the BCT level, at the division level. We need our sensors to be able to know what is happening in our operational environment. So we're looking for ways that can be what could be determined throwaway sensors, or not really, really expensive sensors that are there, but if something happens with the sensor, that it isn't too detrimental. So we're looking for lower sensors that you can actually kind of leave behind or put on many, many locations. And we are developing our DCO development environment that I'll be discussing in one of our future slides. But we're working right now on building out with our PM DCO capability that's called the Forge, and then also the Armory, that has that ties in with our industry partners, with our operators, with our requirements on rapidly increasing our DCO development. And so that is called our DCO development environment. On the offensive side, we have our OCO ICD, our overarching requirement documents were joint approved. Also wanted to highlight our DCO overarching document was also joint approved. And we have also now Army requirements that have been approved at the Army level. Those were approved in May and June. So similar to the defensive side, we also have the cyber tool development environment platforms where we need our capability for the tool developers to create their capabilities. And so those requirements have been approved, and then we are working with the PM on actually developing that environment of where the tool developers, in conjunction with the operators right in that location, can quickly, rapidly develop their capabilities. If they notice that they are on a network and they need to tweak or modify their code because they notice something in the environment, you now have a tool development network right at that same location where you can fix the capabilities, get it back on the network, not taking weeks or months to actually create that capability. Similar to on the defensive side where we had the infrastructure, you need the infrastructure on even for our offensive side, the platforms that effects are prepared from, along with the firing platform. So in the land domain where you have the Apache and the Bradley, you need the cyber firing platform also. And so those are the requirements that have just been approved, and we are rapidly working those with the PM on creating those capabilities. And then the future requirements that are coming are what we would call the counters, the actual bullets, the effects that we would be trying to provide. And so we are working on obtaining those effects, and the requirements are coming. We expect those to be approved by this winter also, to actually have approved Army and joint requirements. For the persistent cyber training environment, the PCTE. So the Army is the lead for the joint community on creating the persistent cyber training environment. From the requirements aspect, the requirement has been approved at the Army this past winter, and we are now going through the joint process through what's called the JROC to have it become joint approved. And so we're here in the next couple months, we're expecting that will become the joint approved for the actual overarching requirement document. And we are doing rapid spirals of the actual capability with our PEOs. The persistent cyber training environment, it's a virtual training environment primarily for our cyber mission force, so that they can be able to train as they fight. And so that's a key thing that we need with the PCTE. And I have a couple slides as I'll go into more detail on the PCTE here in a couple slides. And our final one is the cyber situational understanding. So all of these three, the defensive cyber operations, offensive cyber operations, and the persistent cyber training environment, have been primarily focused on the cyber mission force, the cyber combat mission teams, the cyber protection teams, and now as we're moving those down to the I2Qs and the cyber mission battalion. The cyber situational understanding, which I'll also go into more detail in the following slide, is primarily for the BCT, for the division, for the commanders, not for our cyber mission force. And that what we're trying to get there is more understanding of what is actually happening in this invisible domain. Not necessarily for the S6 and the cyber personnel, but for the commander and the battle staff. And so we're trying to ensure that we understand what is actually occurring in the cyber domain. The other items that I'll highlight on these is we work with 4 PEOs, and most of them will be here this Thursday as we actually are now combining TechNet with some of our PEO, our main PMs. With our DCO is PMDCO from PEO EIS at Fort Belvoir. OCO is with PEO IE and WNS. i.e. WNS. They're at Aberdeen. PCTE is with PEO Stry. They're in Orlando. And Cyber Situational Understanding is with PC3T. They're in Aberdeen. And so that is the key item, the key members that make up our stakeholders for our requirements. So with the TCM Cyber, we don't do the normal development process where we write a capability document and then it takes 4 or 5 years to start developing the capabilities to then work with the operators. We're doing more of a evolutionary capability, a more agile type process. We're using in the Army and the JROC what is called an IT box, of where we are being able to have the flexibility of actually getting after our capabilities faster. So we have a 5-year IT box, and specifically with our defensive cyber operations, which I'll highlight, is we are working a very quick development cycle. We work with the PM, with the developers, with our operational force, with the TICMs, with our stakeholders, extremely closely to get after things very fast. We aren't looking for things that happen that take 2 years or 3 years or 5 years to develop, but we're doing very quick spirals. And so the key item, especially from the PM-DCO side, our offensive side, even our PCTE and Cyber-SU, is to be able to partner with our PMs. On the DCO side, we want to ensure that we're in the what's called the consortium, and be able to make it into the forge that has been developed, with the forge in the Army up at Fort Belvoir, that's going to be coming here to the Georgia Cyber Center, to the Fort Gordon area also, which is the great location where industry can provide us the capabilities with our operational force, primarily the Cyber Protection Brigade, the 780th Military Intelligence Cyber Brigade from the OCO side, to provide the quick turns on our capabilities. And so that's what we're really looking at, providing things quickly, not take years and years to develop. And so we work with the develop, the assess, the deploy, the learn, and the iterate. And some of the spirals we've been able to have, I won't talk about some of the specifics, but we were able to get things from the requirement going to the PM, obtaining industry partners, providing the prototype, then providing a operational test at the Cyber Battle Lab here at Fort Gordon with our operational users, to then develop the first capabilities within 6 months. And that's the type of structure that we are looking for. For our cyber situational understanding capabilities, this is a little bit more detail of some of our new requirements. Our DCO and our offensive cyber operations capabilities have been moving along for several years. One of our new capabilities is the cyber situational understanding, the Cyber-SU, where actually this coming October is where it starts its funding from the POM. It's actually the IT box that I was responding to. Our PM just recently, 2 weeks ago, I believe, sent out one of the first RFIs with the industry, and we'll be having other engagements. We've been looking at it with several of our partners at the CyberQuest, some capabilities looking at the Cyber Blitz, which is coming up in September. But our Cyber-SU, as I highlighted, is primarily for our divisions, our BCTs, our core, our tactical formations, not necessarily the cyber mission force. We're looking at the depiction of the commander's battle space, displaying the effect, the operational impact of what is occurring in the network. Not necessarily just a network map of what occurred in the network, but what is the impact to the mission, to the operation. Example that we can use was when we were in CJTF OIR, conducting missions into Kuwait against ISIS as we were moving back into Iraq. And we were conducting the fire missions for the Iraq BCT from Kuwait. And so we've been discussing that the network is now a platform, a weapons platform, and we had concerns with how we were actually able to provide those capabilities, those fire missions. Sometimes when I was there as the regional cyber center, we would have some of our capabilities go down. The AFCEA TADS wouldn't work, or the CPOF wouldn't work. and so you wouldn't get the fire missions up into Iraq. And so when you're looking at it, the impact is, okay, it's great to know that the AFCEA isn't working, but why, and more importantly, what is the operational impact of what is actually occurring? So when you're looking at it, peeling back some of the capabilities, you're saying, okay, the switch was down that took out the server that was working with the AFCEA. Looking at the switch, oh, it was in the same comms closet as the water heater, because we're in Kuwait, and that's just how things go over there. And so the comms closet, the UPS that was there with the switch, the water heater was leaking. That caused the UPS to go down, which caused the switch to go down, which caused the AFCEA system to not be working, along with the chat system of how they were communicating, and we weren't getting the communication. So you wouldn't have been able to necessarily know that from a network map, but being able to see this is what the operational impact is of our invisible logical cyberspace domain. So looking at 3 phases that we are primarily looking at with here: see ourselves, see the battle space, understand the battle space. The first phase we're looking at here for this first iteration with the PM is to see ourselves, as we're trying to understand what our operational environment is. And so we are taking with a key piece from the network mapping, also with the red cyberspace, what the adversaries could be affecting into our BCT network, along with the personas, what cyber personas might be not necessarily even in our area of operations, but affecting our area of operations. So those are some of the key items that we're actually looking at. A lot of it isn't necessarily the network mapping, but its key focus is on the data that's coming in, understanding what that data is, and then visually being able to show it to the commanders, and not for the S6 staff, but for the whole S3, the S2, the whole battle staff and the commander. So that's definitely a key challenge that we are looking with our industry partners to help us with, especially with this first phase, and it's just getting started right now as we are looking at starting the RDT&E as an official program here in October. The persistent cyber training environment. This is a little bit of the diagram. Sorry for those in the back of the room. But we are creating realistic training, enhancing our training for our cyber mission forces. Primarily, we're starting with the individual training, then with our crew, our team training, and then finally with the validation and certification type cyber flag exercises that the United States Cyber Command works with. And so we're looking at the users being able to conduct their training plan, scheduling, helping to more automate the schedule of the environment, build, modify the actual environment so that you aren't doing it from scratch, being able to reuse the data in the content library, having the data repository, conduct more automated assessments of the actual users, and making sure that the environment they're actually operating on is representative of their operational environment. That's a key piece too. Utilizing the cyber weapons, the toolkits that they normally utilize to ensure that the training they are getting is realistic. And then having automated type actors so that we don't always have to rely on a large op for their training. Then they conduct the training, and a key piece with the content library is being able to, once it's created, it's just like a library here at home. You check it out, you check it back in, you can use it across cyber mission teams so that you don't always have to keep recreating the exact same content for the training forces. Also key is assessing the training to ensure that our cyber mission teams are able to conduct the operations, and that they meet the fully operation capable, and that they are fully not just operation capable, but fully mission capable, and ensuring, okay, what does fully mission capable actually mean? What is their mettle, and how can we ensure that they are assessed for actually doing that, which ties into enabling the talent management that General Funk was talking about. As we have a small force, how do we ensure what the actual force is capable of doing? And so all of these are some aspects the persistent cyber training environment is getting after to build. And again, we had the overarching requirement is now approved at the Army. It's about to be approved at the joint level. We're building this out for the joint force. This isn't for the Army, but for our Air Force, our Navy, our Marine, all of our cyber mission forces, including the Compo 2, Compo 3, our National Guard, and our Reserve forces. And this is a key piece that we're actually working on. So some of the key challenges that we definitely need help on from academia, from our industry partners, are some of the areas we already discussed earlier with artificial intelligence, our 9 out of the 12 TRADOC future trends. But artificial intelligence, okay, at least for us, one of the things we're looking at is how to reduce the time to reconfigure and react to the adversary. When we get even just talking about DODIN, when we get our patching requirements, we can't be spending days to weeks to patch. We need to be able to do things extremely fast, extremely quick. And so how can we utilize artificial intelligence to help react? How can we minimize our focus on analysis and actually have our human partner be doing more on the execution? So those are some key things we're actually looking at is, okay, how can we utilize our technology, our AI, to take some of the actual sifting through all of the data, bringing it up to what is important for our users to do, to then execute off of that. Dynamic threat identification, and then also closing the gap between our technology and our operator capabilities. As we highlighted, we are having the global war on the talent, and so as we train up our operators, making sure that we leverage the technology for what their capabilities are, both for the training and for what it is that they can do that technology can help them achieve. So cyberspace modeling and simulation, we discussed some of the persistent cyber training environment, which is similar with our modeling in SIM, but not just the cyber training environment. Our operations mission planning, the rehearsals, the mission rehearsal exercises, the proficiency training, similar to the PCTE, our situational understanding to model in SIM, okay, if we make the changes to this network, what is actually going to be happening to the network? Or if we have an effect, what can we expect that the effect would actually be? Sorry. And then the predictive modeling, as we, again, to actually predict what could happen. Some of the modeling and simulation aspects is to also help us conduct the penetration testing so that we aren't doing it on a live network of our network, but being able to say, okay, this is what the network map is, this is what our capabilities are, and so now we're able to actually conduct realistic threat-based tactics against the model of our network. And so those are some things that we're also looking at trying to achieve. The advanced analytics, being able to conduct more predictive and highlighting here the lightweight analytics so that as we have our VCTs forward, our divisions forward in the environment, we're not trying to do analytics all the way back to the continental United States or into a large cloud. The cloud could be there, and it could be there for most of the network, but remember, we're expecting to go into a competitive environment that our network may or may not be up all the time. So how are we able to do analytics from our forward elements that would desperately require it, both for the cyber situational understanding, for our cyber warfare battalion, and our I2Qs. Along with dynamically reshaping our cyberspace, the platforms, the networks, the environment, the software, highlighting the changes, the rapid changes that we need to occur in our networks, both to defend and to ensure that we have the required effects from our operational side. So we talk about here the cyber stealth technology, kind of both sides, okay? If we want to be stealthy, but then we also need to see the stealth, kind of those aspects where we want the stealth submarine, but we need to have the destroyers that can find the submarine. The signature masking and reduction, and then also being able to see on the flip side what occurs there. The obfuscation, and then returning to a known state while we're operating? How can we quickly return our network back into a good location when we have the compromise? So these are just a few of the items that some of the challenges that we're looking at. We definitely appreciate a lot of the papers that we received when we submitted some of our requests to industry. And we definitely appreciate a lot of the partners that we have, both at the CyberQuest events from the 2019, preparing for the 2020 event, and then going on into the Cyber Blitz types events. And again, these are primarily the requirements that we deal with the Army, and then we partner extremely closely with our PEO partners, with our acquisition community, to actually provide the capabilities. So I know they are going to be here later this week also, but especially on the defensive cyber side, working with consortium, working into what's called the Forge and the Armory that we are now developing, and then with our offensive side, working with our PEOs of ensuring that we get those type of capabilities, highlighting fact that what we're focused on is our multi-domain operations for the 2028-2035 environment that ties directly back into our national defense strategy, into our national security strategy, and we know that it's going to be a ever complex environment, and the competition is going to be very fierce in this environment, and we need to be ready. Otherwise, the force we have is going to be able to fight this insurgent era force, but not be prepared for a multi-domain, large-scale combat operations of what we're looking at in 2035. So I'll be being able to take some questions at this point. We tried to make sure that we had at least a good 20 minutes for questions, and I'll also then be staying afterwards for if there's any questions either in this room or right outside in the hallway for if there's any other key questions as we go. But if there's any questions, I think we have some other microphones also. Discussion. There must be questions. I know there's questions. There's questions out here. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a good question. So first, I just want to highlight for the microphone, that might be taped. So the slides are on the AFCEA website, or you can get through AFCEA to actually get the copy of the slides. And the specific question was if the Cyber Situational Understanding requirement documents are JROC approved, and how we can make sure we interoperate with our joint forces, et cetera. So yes, so our cyber, thank you. I actually didn't highlight that on the slide on that one. But our Cyber Situational Understanding ICD is JROC approved. It is the joint approved documents, along with the Army, what's called the Requirement Definition Package. The RDP is Army approved already, and so what we're actually working on is the first capability drops. But for this one, this is actually more of the Army program of where we are focused on the Army BCTs, divisions, corps. But you're right, the interoperability, not just ensuring that it works with all of our Army systems, but later with unified network operations of ensuring that it could work at that point. So that's why we are very closely tied in with the Mission Command system, and our actual PM is the same one that is developing all of the BCT Mission Command systems and ensuring it's the common operational environment. It's the PM Mission Command. Ours is actually PM Mission Command Cyber. And so that's definitely a good question there. What I will also highlight, speaking of joint solutions, I didn't discuss it during the portfolio, But many of the Army requirements are becoming the joint requirements and the joint approved solutions. Specifically for DCO, we're looking at the DCO mission planning is potentially becoming the joint solution, or not the capability, but the requirement documents working at there, because the Army pretty much has most of the requirement documents approved. Ours were the first ones that were approved at the joint level for DCO, OCO, soon to be PCTE, and Cyber-SU. All of our overarching documents are approved at the joint level. And so many of our actual, again, not necessarily the capability, but the requirements from our requirement definition packages are also being looked at for the joint solution. So we're some of our cyber analytics, our DCO planning, our deployable Dco system are all being considered for the joint requirements. From our offensive cyber side, we're still, most likely our requirements are going to become the joint solution. I won't get into where we're at with some of that. Some of the other services also are looking at the requirements, but our requirements are going to become the joint requirements. We're building out PCTE for the joint community, and the cyber situational understanding is already JROC approved. Roger. Thank you for the question. Good questions. Are there any other key questions? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the PCTE, so PEO STRI is also the one that works with the other ranges and actually builds out the ranges for the Army. And so the PCTE is designed to interoperate with the joint IO range along with the national ranges and all of the other cyber ranges. We're ensuring that it has the capability there so that if we have a individual or a team that's on the joint IO range, that we would be able to conduct the combined training with teams that are on the PCTE. So that's a good question, but we're definitely wanting to ensure that we aren't just starting from scratch, but utilizing what is already present for our DoD solutions. And that's a key reason that PEO STRI that works with the rest of our ranges is working on that. Along with, we're starting to have the initial discussions with what we would be able to work with a synthetic training environment, the STI, the Army STI, that's also worked with PEO STRI. Yeah, yes, sir. Roger. Good question. And so the question was, is PCTE going to be primarily on the high side, or is it going to be different enclaves? So the answer is yes, it's going to be different enclaves. The focus right now is, for the near term, we're building it out with unclassified and top secret enclaves for the individual training, being able to be conducted on those with soon to then also include SIPR for then conducting the cyber flag events. And I know there was also discussion with the United States Cyber Command with the J7. They are very interested in it being, in the future, having it being capable of being conducted with our coalition partners. But right now the main focus is on the individual training, as we need to ensure that our cyber mission force actually has the individual training to then be able to conduct the large-scale exercise events. So that's how they're building it out. But the intent is to have it on, when it reaches its end state, it will be on top secret, secret, and unclassified. Any other questions? I know there's some good ones. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Roger, so the question there was elaborate a little bit more on the Garrison DCO platform and the Global Enterprise Fabric, the GEF, with Netcom. So there had been two efforts, somewhat similar, but with two different focuses. Netcom with Army Cyber through CIOG 6 had been working on the Global Enterprise Fabric with the intent of putting DoDIN-type tools, monitoring tools, capabilities from the regional cyber centers to move into their installations so that to help streamline the regional cyber centers and the actual DoDIN-type operations. And then on the DCO side, we had been developing something similar, a virtual environment that was needing at the installation so that we wouldn't need to deploy our DCO forces as often. If you already have the capability there, you could do it remotely from Fort Gordon or Fort Belvoir or wherever you could remote into it. So the discussion, and so we've been testing over the last several months, is okay, we don't need a Global Enterprise Fabric, a GEF, and a Garrison DCO platform, a GDP. What we need is one system that can be used for both. And so we've been testing the capability. Also, the issue with, not an issue, but Global Enterprise Fabric wasn't part of a program of record with a requirement, and it wasn't part of a PM system. It was with Netcom using it. So they were moving it underneath our Garrison DCO platform, the GDP, to have it be with the PM, a program of record, in order to conduct that. What it would also allows us is now more locations than we were going to be going to with the Garrison DCO platform, because the Garrison Enterprise Fabric, the GEF, was going to be at many locations, more locations than we were planning on putting the GDP. So that's kind of the combination of what we were doing. And so that's definitely key and a good reason of, with Army Cyber, having the operation control of both Netcom and then also building out the DCO forces for the Cyber Protection Brigade. We noticed, okay, yeah, we need to combine these efforts to both have it more streamlined and be better for our capabilities. Yeah, I'm not positive. So the question was, do I have a timeline on when that would be available? So the Global Enterprise Fabric, the GEF, had been already testing at a couple installations, and so now we're kind of falling under that. So depending on how you look at it, once you have the virtual system up and we put our DCO tools on, it's available. Would be initially available at one or two locations. It's going to still take probably several years to actually build it out across the Army. Yes, sir. Okay, yeah, if the question was discussing the Netcom mapping program, the AM4, the AM4PS, and if that's related. No, I'll have to get with, I'm aware of it, but we'll need to get with Netcom to see exactly what that was looking at and if it could relate with some of the other capabilities here. I know that there's definitely tools that could be used for that. But as of now, not from the requirements in the, I don't want to talk specifically for PMDCO. He might be aware of something that I'm not personally aware of, but that's a good piece. Thank you, sir. Any other good questions? Or key questions? They're all good questions, sorry. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So I was wondering about the offensive cyber operations portion of this. If this is talking about creating a new infrastructure in addition to the infrastructure that we already have for offensive cyber operations, and then an additional offensive cyber operations firing platform in addition to the one that we already have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question for offensive cyber operations is this creating a new infrastructure and firing platform So essentially, I'm not sure exactly which one you're talking about, and we won't go here, but this started with the assuming the ONS that was started with INSCOM and with Army Cyber. So what this is doing was putting that into the actual requirement definition package and ensuring the requirements is there, and then expanding that capability. So we're kind of ensuring. So if you're thinking that the infrastructure that's already been out there being used for a while, this is formalizing those as the requirements, and we are increasing their capacity and moving into increasing the performance and ensuring that it now moves to the next level. Right, Roger. Next question. Man, keep them coming. These are good questions. I know if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it too. Yes.
You mentioned that there's a lot of downtime with reconfiguring or trying to be able to react to scenarios as they happen. Do you have any real-life examples of how the deployable DCO systems have encountered those kinds of issues? Kind of give us a timeline as to some of those concerns.
Yeah, Roger. So the question is talking about discussing a little bit more of the downtime between as we have an incident and then as we're able to respond to the incident. Yeah. So when I was referencing there is a couple aspects. One from just the normal DODIN or area defense that a regional cyber center could be conducting, and that's also where we would want some of the artificial intelligence to help out with that. With the DCO system, there is, as of now, if they get the call or if it's a crisis response, you get the call and you move forward. So the DCO system allows them, or miniaturizing it, getting it smaller, ensures that they don't actually have to put it into the luggage compartment or on a platform, a crate, something like that to create over. Some of our original ones, I think our original one weighed around, well, whatever, but it was large, and we actually had to ship it. And so if you're shipping something overseas, it can take a while, and you're going through customs, and so we would have a delay of potentially several weeks to several months as you get things through, rather than having it on them and, hey, you can pretty much get through customs and things a lot faster when you have it with you. The other key piece of, at least from the DCO side, and how it ties into the Garrison DCO platform and the other network capabilities, is ensuring, okay, if we're able to do them remotely, then one, you might still want to send people forward with a DCO kit, but you could already be conducting the initial triage, the initial incident response from the remote location, from Fort Gordon, from Fort Belvoir, from the Army Cyber Operations Center, whatever. So as they're flying forward, you're already having the capabilities there. And that's one of the key pieces of how the Garrison DCO platform can tie into the rest of the capabilities. Okay, there's got to be two more. We have a few more minutes, but if are there any other questions for the group? Yes, sir. Roger, so the question was essentially kind of our data repository, or ensuring that when we find something that can be shared, the knowledge management of what our teams are seeing. What was kind of there. So yeah, there's a couple items for that. One, so the big data platform, as we look at the analytics, that's kind of a repository where the data could go. Two, both at various levels as the teams are interoperable. And so the Cyber Protection Brigade does have what's called or what used to be called the Cyber Fusion Center that works at that, at least from their DCO side, and along with the ACOEC that does the Army Cyber Operations Center that works at ensuring that information is there. So I was kind of taking it from both the organizations that look at doing that, and then some of the data repositories, the cloud-based system that has that. And some of the concern we would have as we move into the competitive environment is ensuring that we either have the connection back to that, to the repository of the signatures and the data that can do the analytics on it, as we're forward in the fight in the contested environment. So that's what we're looking at for the lightweight analytic capabilities for. But for the knowledge management aspect, that is from the DCO side, from the Cyber Protection Brigade side, they have an organization that works at that internally across all of the cyber protection teams, and then also at the Army cyber level that would want to take that both from the CPB, from the regional cyber centers, and from the reserve components as those teams get stood up. Alrighty, any other questions? If not, I'll be at least up here or then moving out into the hallway until you guys are all done with me. But it's all good. But thank you for today, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week at TechNet.